Right, I'm going to start recording for a commentary for the Immelmann. Just had a incredible first game on it where it did about 167,000 damage. So essentially, one of the things I want to look at first is the armor that this thing has. It basically has the exact same frame or the same armor scheme as the MVR. The other main difference is it has a what would I say? It has a different AA. The AA doesn't go out as far, so AA on this goes 5.2, and the Immelmann only goes out to. Oh, did they change it? So they're both 5.2. Let me double check. Yep. So it looks like the AA is basically the same, and they both have that 50 millimeter deck. And what's important about that is you're vulnerable to HE spam from Stalingrad and greater caliber, Hindenburg. Midway bombs can pin your deck. You essentially have the same planes as you drop the same type of bomb as a midway does. So if we look at them, they do 68 millimeters of pin. So if you're going to try to snipe another Immelmann, you'll notice that you can't pin any of this 145. You're going to have to hit the ship really high. You're going to have to hit on the sides or this deck right here, because otherwise you're just going to shatter versus this main belt. And that, you could do the 60 millimeter belt in this section. So like the green sections and the light orange are the best you could hope for. It looks like it's the same pretty much on the other side. So that'll be important if you ever try to snipe another Immelmann. It's pretty well protected from other carriers. With the exception, well, that's not necessarily from other carriers, but it's very well armored. So I'll just go over the aircraft real quick. You have your skip bomber, which drops 4 bombs. There's 4. They each drop a bomb. There's 4 planes in your squad, and they're all very fast. Maximum speed with boost is like 242, and these are Graf Zeppelin planes. They do 209 knots for the fast speed, which is still great. They don't hit that hard. I mean, the armament you're probably going to favor is the skip bombers because they can do damage from further away and take less damage, but I think you'll find that the torp bombers are really good, especially versus more agile cruisers, because it's hard to set up on their broadsides, and the skip torpedo bombers are the way to go. Let's see, for modules, I went everything for speed, so increased the boost duration time. I went for extra time on torpedo bomber attack time rather than the 5% faster speed because I want to boost the amount of time that I can initiate my attack run. So I can initiate the attack run from like 6-7 kilometers out and basically get below flak as soon as I'm in range. Skip bomber, I increase the HP because that's pretty much what you're going to do the most of the time. They definitely take more AA damage if I had to bet on it. I went for flight control mod restoration 1 just to get more planes on deck and faster reload. And then I went for flight control modification 2. For this guy, I decided to go for like an intercepted build. The core of the build is basically this. Aircraft armor, faster planes, survivability expert for the extra health, and I would highly recommend getting the bomb flight control just to make your cruisers, your skip bombers that much faster. Now, if you wanted to be more of a full attack build, you could definitely go for Swiftfish and torpedo bomber. And last gasp gets to proc quite a bit because you drop so quickly that you get to that last squadron, and having an extra boost is helpful. Helps you avoid a lot of A damage. The planes are so fast, I very rarely take flak damage, but we'll see how we do in the video. I went for kind of a fighter setup, so I still want my fighters to be able to spot, so I didn't take the interceptor option. So I got the extra charges of fighters, and then I got increasing the latch time. So they take a little bit longer to patrol, but as soon as you have them up and someone wanders into it, they latch super fast. The other one that I could have dropped probably last gasp for is Search and Destroy, which just increases the patrol radius by 10%, but they seem to be okay in this one. I was up against another Immelmann in this match. So let's see if this still records. I'm going to try to go to the video. I'll show the score screens in the Discord that I had just because they did not show up in the video. Because the match basically went the full 20 minutes. I had Lee watching. It was pretty entertaining. So there's the score screen. Let's see if I can make this bigger. I ended up being second with 4 kills. The only person surviving my team. I killed everybody but the Pommern. And then if I look at this again, and there's the score screen. 164k damage, credits, lots of torp hits. I ended up getting a lot of torp runs on the Iowa at the end. And I think I ended up capping as well. I got 3 defended caps. Maybe I didn't get the cap in time, but winds up being a pretty exciting match. So we'll go right into it. I'm going to keep the volume muted for this just because I was playing music in the background at the time. So I'd always recommend to start off with the skip bombers because they're the most agile. They're super fast. You can just get out. So like the natural cruise speed is 197. When you boost, you get up to about 242 with the skip bomber talent. Drop the fighter on the north end of the cap. That way it would keep DDs from getting into it, at least having to turn on their AA. So I see the 2 Iowas start cutting toward the center, just spot more of their team, and lo and behold, there's an Austin. Austin and 2 Allens, which is probably the most AA I could find on this side of the map. Go for a quick skip. 1 bounce. I think I end up getting 2 hits and a non-pen, which means I hit the gun. Otherwise, as long as you don't hit a gun on most of these cruisers, you'll be fine. The main belt you have to avoid as well. So what I'd recommend for those skip bombers is dropping midway up the ship on pretty much every class. Unless Austin, you should probably be able to hit at the belt and possibly Citadel since they only have a 32mm side. Small X might be another one. Actually, when we looked it up, it was... I think they had 80mm on the main belt. So general rule of thumb is just go for like the upper belt and deck for most ships. So here I dropped fighters, and like I said, they quick latch. So I think he recalled them before my fighters latched, but I was just trying to give my kids some support. I stayed away from the east side of this map because I couldn't stand up to the 2 Allens and the Austin for AA. I go here. I make a mistake here. You notice the first line is green and the other lines are yellow. Basically, it means my bombers were too high, and the bombs hit the water at too sharp of an angle, so they didn't skip. So you have to be very careful of that when you go over islands. You have to basically you have to wait for your planes to get to a lower altitude, the lines to all go green, and then if they're all green, they'll skip to that 3rd line. The 3rd line is the most accurate. You want to launch for the 3rd line whenever possible because you want to get... so here I drop another fighter for the kid. And I'm just trying to torp the Benson that's in his smoke. He's only got a single puff of smoke. I can kind of see where he's firing, so I know that he's kind of vulnerable. And it looks like he was reversing because his thing just got a little bit bigger. But the ARP Maya's full broadside to me. He popped his consumable fighter. It looked like it just ran out, so that was lucky for me. I wound up focusing on him quite a bit just because I'm trying to give the kid as much support as I can. So he launches his torps. I don't think the kid gets any hits. I know that the DD's on the left side of the smoke, so I can drop him without really exposing myself to any AA. I think a better strategy is to alternate between skip bombers and torp bombers, just because if you do that, you're going to get maximum regen on both. I didn't pre-drop at all on this, and it seemed to work out pretty well. The only time I would recommend pre-dropping is if you know you're going to lose a bunch of planes to heavy AA. But for the most part, the speed of these planes is what makes it amazing. So here I'm wandering into a fighter area. I'm kind of guessing, that the DD's in the middle part of the smoke. And I get lucky, get 2 hits, and he actually catches fire and dies. I probably could have recalled. The other option I could have done with those fighters, I think the Immelmanns are pretty quick, but with slower fighters like midway fighters and FDR, you can actually boost away and drag them to friendly AA and they'll get shot down. So hopefully here, I'm just trying to give him support, the kid. I think at this point I'm going to go after that Maya, because pretty much the Maya and the Austin wind up pushing the cap. So here I'm detected. I got to go really wide because I don't really have an angle on this Maya. So I set up over the hill. He drops a fighter. So it takes a few seconds before it latches. I should have gone out wider here. It's actually not that good of a drop. And I have a bad habit of using A and D from playing the FDR bomber so much, but whenever you attack with torpedo bombers, you should just be using the mouse to get the... Because if you maneuver with the mouse, there's slider adjustments, but it does let that reticle tighten up a lot faster. Anytime you hit A and D, you're just going to make it go further back. So, kid's still in trouble, so I'm going to go try to support him. He's got an Austin and a Maya, and basically any of those ships are real bad news for him. 2 torpedoes on the Musashi, no floods. It doesn't seem like I get very many floods with the Immelmann torps. So here I go for a first line drop, and he turns just in time, and I pretty much bounce all around his ship. Ideally, you do want to hit broadside, but you can go for those first line drops. And you'll notice that the reticle got tighter, so you can definitely use smaller mouse movements and the reticle aim and shrink. That's my son saying that he has a shoe in his hand. Alright, I go for the Maya here. I don't think I lead quite enough. I think I only hit 2 bombs. Actually, it didn't look like I hit any bombs. So, especially when there's tight quarters like this, really the only bomb angle that you have is like from the east side of the B cap. Here, I decide to move back toward the east to, get behind that island in the mid part of C and just help this kid out and get closer with planes. So the Austin's going to get into my kid's smoke, unfortunately. Here I can follow up with a drop on the Maya. The smart way is to go around the islands. He puts up another fighter, which is unfortunate. I was hoping that he would reverse back, but he didn't, so... There, he was actually kind of exposed enough. I might have considered going after, but I think I go after the Austin instead. He's broadside. When you start the attack run like this, you actually drop behind the mountain, so that reduces some of the A that you take. He's pretty much forced and committed to a turn there, and I believe he winds up being torps and dying. Alright, so it looks like the Alaska finishes him off. Alright. I only hit 1 torp, so now I just have to take care of that Maya. Now the mistake I make here is I got a full thing of torp planes, but I don't wind up doing it. And skip bombers are definitely, especially with a Japanese cruiser like this, that's basically an Otago, they're fairly maneuverable, and he is smart, and he just does constant donuts in the map relative to my planes, so I'm trying to speed around him at 240 knots, doing these tight turns, looking for an opportunity to turn in and smack him, and I can't do it. And what I should have done is just probably gotten 1 attack off or called, and then switched to torpedo bombers, because it winds up being a lot more effective. So looking at the map as we line up this drop, so I'm going to go for a 1-line drop, because I'm so close. Wind up getting 1 hit, 1 fire. I probably could have released a little bit sooner. One of the things I found out is if you can actually get the line to be just before where the ship is, it'll bounce, and you can kind of almost get guaranteed hits that way. I don't know what happened here. The camera messed up and went crazy for some reason. But another hit, but you'll see that single bomb hits really don't do that much, and I think he was saturated because he wasn't taking very much damage at all. I try to go for a 1-line drop. Drops get a little bit wonky when you'll see the reticles very strange as you go over this island. And it basically hits a tree and blows up. And here come the torp miners, which I should have been using the whole time. So on the east flank, we got an Albemarle and a Benson. The Albemarle just got killed by the Columbo. The Benson is getting heavily focused by the carrier. Unfortunately, I can't help him. Or I could have helped him, but I was too focused on this Maya. Alright, Alaska takes out him again, and then at this point the Alaska starts really asking for support. He's got a Musashi and a Drake on his flank and a Palmer, and that's way at the back of the map, not being very effective. So I push my carrier closer so I can support him. And then I start going to town on this Musashi. It has tier 6 AA, so it really isn't a big threat to these planes. You can just get triple drops and just keep going at it. So long as you use the mouse, you'll get tight reticles like this, and you can get a lot of torp hits. Slightly underled this, and I think I got 3 hits, and might have been 2 hits, we'll see. Barely clipped on the 3rd hit. Here he slows up. Pushing up to the island like this makes it where I can only approach him from one side, so it's not a bad play on his point. So I have to go all the way around. If I was in a FDR, you could go parallel and then turn in at the last second. But instead I gotta go all the way around his AA. He's got just 2 flak pleps, which is basically what a Shimakaze has in terms of AA, so it's pretty depressing. Here I should have been slowing down. Well, actually I was slowing down. I was trying to get the reticle as tight as possible. Just going to keep going after him with torps. The reason I didn't go for the skip bombers in this situation because he's on the one side, so I can cut in tighter with torps. Probably have a better chance of flooding, and he also has really heavy main belt armor. So if I don't hit that or the upper belt or the deck, I would wind up shattering a lot of my HE. My son threw a shoe at me. So the Lepanto here is trying to get the cap and get the Columbo. If he had a smoke consumable, he probably should have used it and just gotten the cap. Fortunately, he's getting focused by the Immelmann and the Columbo, so I don't think it works out well for him. I should have angled. He was reversing, so you want to drop just a little bit behind to get more torps. If I had gotten one more torp on them, he would have died on that run. I think he only took 2. And here I only have to land 1 torp, so I don't mind going in at an angle. So if any of these torps hit, he's guaranteed to kill him. I go ahead and recall, and then I start focusing on the A cap, or rather Bravo cap. I move my ship behind that island just because I want to get as close as possible to the front while being mostly covered. So the only thing that's really a threat is the Palmer, but he's so far back, I'm not really concerned about it. I should have moved a little bit deeper into the chasm between or where the Alaska is, essentially, but a little bit further, because then the Palmer would have to get all the way to like G5 to get shots on me. So here I go for a skip against the Immelmann. I think I went pretty high up on the deck. I ended up getting 3 pins. Fighters did aggro, but I was able to boost and get an additional drop on this Iowa. The planes really do not like maneuvering when they're in this zoomed in mode. So here I went for a high drop. 1 fire, 2 hits. The reticle definitely gets a lot more accurate if you set up further away. So here I'm just kind of committed to giving the Alaska air cover. I think I have 2 fighters left. So I pop my fighter, so if he strikes the Alaska, it's going to get picked up. My plan here was basically, instead of going after the Immelmann and procking getting killed by a fighter, I was going to do 1 drop on the Columbo, and then with the last set of planes, do a shot on the Immelmann. I go for a really poor drop. I was a little impatient. He turns in. and I go for a second drop on the Colombo. You get behind this big island, you basically don't take any AA fire. Start the attack run while in the turn. I start slowing down as much as I can because I want this to tighten up as much as possible. He's going broadside to my Alaska. I got a second launch off. I go for skip bombs. I think either munition would have been fine at this point. Alright, so I'm out of fighters on this particular consumables. Here you have to be worried about dropping over the mountains, because you have to go for a first line drop here essentially because you're going to be too high. There's the camera glitching out again. I'm surprised I didn't get more hits there. Basically the bombs went straight into the water because my the planes were so high, so it was a high angle of attack. Here he's stuck broadside, and if I can get a fire or two, he'll be a dead Colombo. So I go for the deck, he turns out. I get unlucky with one hit. I think I should have recalled here. There's no way you can really get that last fighter in. So I try to finish up with... So here I don't even notice the Pommern has my broadside. My carrier's still moving north. I think I finally move it into the cap, which is the right move. And then I think I recall that because the Iowa is pushing. So I try to angle more toward the Iowa because I know I can kill the Colombo. I didn't even notice, but I think the Alaska killed the CV. The other CV did a really good job of pretty much avoiding any fighters that I put down or recalling. Kind of same thing. I have to be a little more patient with those torp drops. So here I got the Pommern that's engaging my Montana. I don't have any fighters, so I really can't give the Montana support. But I want to focus the Iowa that's lower health. Alright, so now I'm last ship standing. And we have a point leave, so I just have to basically survive, and I'll win in 3 minutes. So here, luckily, the Iowa isn't too close to the island, so I'm able to get a second drop and just not really take any AA fire at all. And he kind of gets tired of this pressure, and I'm able to do a lot more with torp bombers because they have a short arming distance. The skip bombers would be really difficult to use here because of all the islands, so that's why I did 3 successive drops of torp bombers on the Iowa. So here the Iowa's starting to chunk me, so luckily I'm pretty well angled to where the Pommern is now. I think I wound up stopping my ship, or the autopilot messed up. So I try to get moving forward. It's reversing for some reason. I'll have to check my settings, make sure I don't have island avoidance on. So here I even drop a single squad. But I'm so damn close to the planes, and I'm not losing very many. Like, I could pretty much continuously drop torp bombers. Here I go for a skip bomber. I probably should have followed up with torps because it would have been another 2 drop I could have got. They're commenting on how good the armor is on the Pommern. The pro tip for a battleship, just shoot HE at it. Unless it's broadside to you. There I get a really good drop. I get 3 hits, 1 fire. I follow up with just really hoping to get a flood here. Basically, I just have to survive. The game's over in a minute. I'm going to kill the Iowa, I think, with this strike. Considering running sight stab on this, I'm not sure if I'm hitting the A and D keys, but those torpedoes aren't getting quite tight enough. So here I could literally just stay angled, but I decide to risk it and go for the turn, and I think he gets me down to 1/3 of my HP, but I'm basically undetected, and I can just start farming him. I could have killed the Palmer pretty easily if I'd had about another minute of time. But he winds up giving me. He's out in open water, so I can use my skip bombers no problem. It's a little bit different when it gets congested near an island. Use the second line. You see it tightens up. I go for the deck. I get unlucky and really don't get any pens. I think 2 of those hit the bomb, or I hit the turrets of the battleship. That's why I didn't get pens. I love how maneuverable and fast these planes are. You can slow up to kind of... Here I got too close, so I had to use... One thing that was interesting about that drop is I dropped the line before I actually hit the ship. And one of the things that you notice is it forces the bomb to skip, and then it hit the main armor belt of the ship. But it's a good way to get hits if you're trying to salvage a drop at the last second. But it was a really interesting match. First match in that, I think I can do a lot better. Definitely could have done better with the fighter support and better with the torp bombers, but I'm looking forward to playing it more.